They carried generations of riders. They defined what it meant to ride free. But today, these 7 motorcycle brands are fading fast. From broken trust to forgotten names, the decline is real. Stick around for number 1. It's the brand that should have never ended up on this list. Number 7, Harley Davidson. There was a time when Harley Davidson wasn't just a motorcycle brand. It was a cultural institution. For generations of American riders, it represented rebellion, freedom, and pride in something built on home soil. But in 2025, even the most iconic names are not immune to decline. Harley Davidson is still here, but the connection between the brand and its core riders is starting to come undone. Prices are climbing, dealerships are shifting strategies, and longtime customers are beginning to wonder whether the company that once stood for working-class grit is still fighting for the same cause. The cracks didn't appear all at once. Over time, small changes began to alienate the very riders who carried the brand through the decades. Entry-level pricing soared, putting base models beyond the reach of many middle-class buyers. Design decisions leaned toward modern luxury and away from the raw mechanical simplicity that once defined the Harley experience. And as the company pursued new audiences, its messaging softened, turning away from the rough-edged, blue-collar identity that made it legendary in the first place. This shift is being felt in the dealerships. In places like Wisconsin, Georgia, and Montana, floor traffic is slowing, and unsold inventory is building up. Older riders are aging out, and younger buyers aren't stepping in to replace them. The Harley lifestyle, once a defining symbol of masculinity and independence, is struggling to compete in a market crowded with more affordable, more efficient alternatives. For the first time in decades, the brand's dominance is no longer guaranteed. Much of the tension lies in the brand's attempt to modernize. New technologies, new engines, and even electric models have entered the lineup, but instead of exciting loyalists, these changes have raised questions. Is Harley still Harley if it no longer rumbles with a classic V-twin? If its bikes come packed with touchscreen displays and connectivity features? If its price tags rival those of luxury cars? For many riders, the answer is unclear. There's also a deeper concern, one of identity. Harley Davidson built its image on defiance, not compliance, on loud pipes and long roads, but in recent years its marketing has aimed to be broader, safer, more polished. The result is a brand that risks appealing to no one in particular. It no longer speaks with the same voice that once rallied riders across state lines and generations. Instead, it feels caught between two worlds, the traditional rider it once championed and the younger consumer it hasn't quite won over. None of this means Harley Davidson is finished. The name still carries weight, the logo still sparks recognition, and there are still countless riders who would never consider anything else. But the road ahead is not what it used to be. Without a clear path back to the heart of its identity, without reaffirming its loyalty to the people who made it matter, Harley risks becoming something far worse than irrelevant. It risks becoming hollow. Motorcycles are more than machines, they are declarations, and when a brand stops declaring what it stands for, riders start looking elsewhere. Harley Davidson can still reclaim its place, but it must choose who it's building for and why. The next brand on this list once had that clarity, but traded it away, chasing a future its riders never asked for. If you've ever owned one of these fading brands or watched one disappear, hit like and share your story in the comments. Riders deserve to be heard before history forgets them. Number 6. Indian motorcycles. There was a moment when Indian motorcycles looked like it might do the impossible. Stand shoulder to shoulder with Harley Davidson and give riders a second American legend to believe in. Backed by Polaris and equipped with modern engineering, the brand came back into the spotlight with serious ambition. For a few years it worked. Indian earned headlines, dealer interest, and the attention of riders who wanted something bold, heritage-driven, and genuinely American. But in 2025, that momentum has slowed. What once felt like a revival now feels like a brand searching for its place in a market that is no longer listening. From the very beginning of its return, Indian relied heavily on legacy branding. It leaned on the idea of a reborn classic, something rooted in American history but updated for the future. Riders responded to that balance, but over the years, the balance has shifted. Decisions made in design, branding, and marketing have slowed slowly pushed Indian away from the core rider it once targeted. The logo redesign was a flashpoint. Loyal riders saw it as a break from tradition, a move that polished the brand but stripped it of its authenticity. Combined with a marketing tone that felt too corporate and too clean, the emotional foundation began to crack. The real damage, though, has come from limited access. While Harley-Davidson continues to dominate the dealership landscape in rural America, Indian is still playing catch-up. There are entire counties and regions across the Midwest and South where Indian simply has no presence. For a brand built on touring, reliability, and lifestyle ownership, that lack of dealer support is a deal-breaker. Older riders especially depend on trustworthy, local service. If you cannot get a tire swapped or a sensor checked within driving distance, the brand begins to lose its practical appeal, no matter how well it performs on paper. Culturally, Indian has also failed to build a tribe. Harley riders have decades of community behind them. Events, clubs, shared language, shared stories. Indian tried to replicate that culture, but never truly connected. Rallies and ride-outs exist, but they lack the scale and emotional gravity of what Harley has built. And without that community, the machines, no matter how well designed, start to feel isolated. Riders may respect the bikes, but few would say the brand lives in their blood. Dealerships have started to respond accordingly. In states like Missouri, North Carolina, and Nebraska, some dealers have quietly reduced inventory or walked away from the brand altogether. It is not that the bikes are bad, it is that buyers are hesitant. The resale market is softer, the tribe is smaller, the service footprint is thin, and in a world where motorcycles are often a lifelong investment, that level of uncertainty is enough to make riders walk away. Polaris has the manufacturing power and financial stability to turn things around, but it will take more than spec sheets and photo shoots. Indian needs to reconnect with the kind of riders who ride for the sake of riding, not for the sake of branding. That means real investment in dealer expansion. That means listening to the core customer base rather than chasing polished aesthetics. And most of all, it means owning a distinct American voice that is not just a counterpoint to Harley-Davidson, but a legacy in its own right. The next brand on this list never had a legacy to fall back on, and without roots, it found itself falling fast. We picked our favorite gear so you don't have to. Grab the essentials in the description. Number 5. Buell motorcycles. Buell was never built for comfort. It was built to challenge the status quo, to offer an American sport bike that didn't follow the rules. For a while, it worked. Riders respected the innovation, the aggressive performance, and the homegrown engineering that dared to go up against the European and Japanese giants. But underneath all that promise was instability. Over the years, Buell has become less of a motorcycle brand and more of a case study in how not to manage a company. In 2025, the name still exists, but the trust is long gone. The rise and fall and rise again of Buell is one of the strangest stories in American motorcycling. Originally launched under Harley-Davidson's wing, the brand was aimed at creating a performance-focused machine for riders who wanted something fast, raw, and made on U.S. soil. But after several years of promise, Harley pulled the plug. Buell disappeared. Then it came back. Then it vanished again. And then once more, it reappeared under a new company banner, promising to restart production and deliver new machines to market. Each time, riders were asked to believe, and each time, many walked away burned. The biggest problem for Buell today isn't the bikes, it's everything else. The brand suffers from a total lack of infrastructure. Most riders cannot find a dealership within driving distance. Service centers are nearly non-existent. Parts availability is inconsistent, and warranties, when offered, come with more questions than answers. For a brand trying to sell high-performance motorcycles to serious riders, that kind of uncertainty is devastating. If something goes wrong on the road or even during basic maintenance, there's no backup system in place. You are on your own. The brand also lacks cultural presence. Unlike Harley-Davidson or even Indian, Buell never had a tribe. There are no major Buell rallies. There is no national riding club. And outside of a few racing circles, the brand is rarely discussed at bike nights or dealerships. For older American riders who value reliability, community, and service, that absence matters. It makes Buell feel disconnected, like a concept rather than a company. Then there's the resale issue. Because of its rocky history, Buell motorcycles have a reputation for rapid depreciation. Buyers know that a bike bought today might be unsupported tomorrow. That makes purchasing a new Buell a risky investment. Even those who admire the performance hesitate to sign the check, knowing they may struggle to get parts, service, or a fair trade-in down the line. And yet, the brand still builds motorcycles. The engineering is still bold, the designs still turn heads. But in the real world, where bikes are ridden, maintained, and relied upon, Buell continues to fall short. You can have all the power in the world, but if riders can't trust the company behind it, they will walk away. Performance alone is not enough. To succeed in the motorcycle world, a brand needs more than speed. It needs presence. It needs support. And most of all, it needs consistency. Buell has shown none of those things over the last 2 decades. What it has shown is promise, and that promise repeatedly has been broken. The next brand on this list didn't collapse in confusion, it was shut down on purpose, despite building some of the best bikes of its era. Number 4. Victory Motorcycles. Victory was not built on nostalgia, it was built on progress. An American V-twin brand designed to outperform Harley-Davidson in every measurable category. For years, it did just that. Victory bikes were faster, smoother, and often more reliable than their Milwaukee counterparts. The handling was tighter, the engines ran cooler, and the styling offered a modern edge that stood apart from the chrome-heavy traditionalists. For riders who respected Harley but wanted something different, Victory was the answer. But in 2017, Polaris made a decision that still stings today. They shut Victory down, not because it failed, but because it succeeded in the wrong way. The bikes were well engineered. The powertrains delivered strong torque with minimal vibration. Maintenance was simple. Fit and finish were rock solid. Victory wasn't a startup. It was a serious contender backed by a multi-billion-dollar company with the resources to compete. Models like the Vegas, Kingpin, and Cross Country offered an alternative to Harley's lineup that didn't sacrifice comfort or capability. And yet, despite all this, Polaris made the calculated decision to end production, shift focus to Indian, and walk away from a brand that many riders had come to trust. The result was immediate. Riders who had purchased a Victory found themselves holding on to a discontinued brand with no future models, limited parts availability, and a resale market in freefall. Dealerships removed signage, service departments prioritized other brands, and the community that had slowly begun to build around Victory, one ride, one owner at a time, was left stranded. Polaris claimed it would support existing customers, but many soon discovered that support was minimal and, in some cases, non-existent. Victory's shutdown wasn't a collapse. It was a corporate pivot, but that doesn't make it any easier for the men and women who believed in the brand. This wasn't a company that failed because of poor quality or low sales. It was pulled off the road by a parent company that decided brand loyalty wasn't as valuable as market positioning. That kind of decision leaves scars. Riders don't forget being abandoned. What makes Victory's story even harder to swallow is how good the bikes were. These weren't experimental or flawed machines. They were refined, durable, and ready for long-haul riding. Owners routinely put tens of thousands of miles on them with no major issues. Mechanics praised their simplicity. Riders loved their ride quality. And now they exist in a strange limbo. Still running, still respected, but slowly disappearing from the conversation. For older American riders who value commitment, that kind of exit feels like betrayal. Motorcycling is about more than machines. It's about trust. Trust that the company behind the badge will be there when something breaks, when you need a part, or when you simply want to ride with others who share your pride in ownership. Victory didn't get the chance to build that legacy. It was cut short before it could fully mature. The bikes are still out there. Some owners hold on to them tightly, refusing to part with a machine that still delivers everything they want. Others have moved on, frustrated by the lack of support. Either way, Victory has become a cautionary tale in modern motorcycling. Even when you build it right, it doesn't mean you'll get to keep building it. Victory did everything right, except survive the spreadsheet. The next brand on this list didn't get shut down in a boardroom. It's disappearing because fewer and fewer riders are willing to take the risk. Number 3. Moto Guzzi. For riders who value individuality over image, Moto Guzzi once offered something few brands could match: authentic character, mechanical honesty, and a design language untouched by marketing trends. The transverse-mounted V-twin engine, the shaft drive, the upright touring stance. It all felt purposeful, built for those who rode because it was part of who they were. But in 2025, Moto Guzzi has become something else entirely, an afterthought. Once proudly distinctive, it is now quietly fading from the American motorcycle landscape, and for many riders, it no longer feels like a viable option. The decline hasn't been dramatic. It's been slow, quiet, and frustrating. Year by year, dealership support has thinned out. In states like Kansas, Alabama, and Idaho, finding a Moto Guzzi on the showroom floor has become rare. Even more difficult is finding a technician who knows how to service one properly. While Harley Davidson shops can be found in nearly every corner of the country, Moto Guzzi's U.S. presence is barely holding on. This lack of infrastructure has made ownership risky, especially for older riders who rely on regional support for long-term maintenance. Moto Guzzi's design philosophy has always leaned traditional, but tradition without evolution eventually becomes a liability. Features like ride modes, traction control, and digital instrumentation only began appearing on its lineup long after other brands had already moved on to more advanced systems. And when those updates did arrive, they often felt like aftermarket solutions tacked onto aging platforms. It's not that Moto Guzzi lacks engineering talent, it's that the execution has consistently arrived too late to matter. This is a brand that, at its best, captured something timeless. European touring charm with mechanical soul. Bikes that growl, not whine. Bikes that feel alive, not digitized. But in today's competitive market, soul is no longer enough. Buyers expect service, reliability, and confidence that their investment will be supported for years to come. Moto Guzzi is struggling on all three fronts. Production numbers remain low, and for a brand trying to stay relevant, that creates a second problem. Visibility. New riders entering the market don't know the name. Dealerships don't push it. Most motorcycle media gives it a passing glance, if any attention at all. Without marketing presence, without retail support, and without a strong rider community, Moto Guzzi has slipped into a strange limbo. Too respected to be dismissed, too neglected to be saved. The most loyal owners still stand by their machines. They speak of balance, simplicity, and heritage. And they are right. When the bike runs, it offers a riding experience that feels authentic in a way most modern bikes cannot replicate. But even the most devoted Guzzi rider will admit parts can take weeks to arrive. Diagnostics are slow. Support is scattered. And if you break down on the road, chances are no one nearby knows how to get you back on two wheels. This brand deserves better. It deserves leadership that understands what makes Moto Guzzi special, but also what keeps it from being practical for the average American rider. Until that happens, it will continue to be a niche choice for those who are mechanically inclined and geographically lucky. For everyone else, it's just too much of a gamble. The next brand on this list hasn't faded quietly. It looks and sounds like it was ripped from a Soviet parade, and it's fighting for survival in a very different world. Number 2, Ural motorcycles. There was a time when Ural motorcycles were considered charming, relics of another era that somehow survived into the present day. Built originally as military machines for the Soviet Union, Urals earned a cult following among off-road adventurers, collectors, and riders who valued durability over refinement. But in 2025, that cult is shrinking fast. Ural motorcycles are now some of the hardest machines to justify owning in the American market. With parts delays, geopolitical tension, and aging technology, even the most loyal riders are starting to walk away. The brand's core appeal was always its rugged simplicity. Ural motorcycles are based on World War II-era designs, complete with sidecars, reverse gears, and two-wheel drive capability. They are built to plow through snow, mud, and wilderness, not glide along a freeway. That uniqueness gave Ural a place in the motorcycle world that no other brand could fill. But it also left them frozen in time. Today's riders expect reliability, efficiency, and at least some level of refinement. Ural never quite caught up. Dealership availability in the United States has always been limited, but recent global events have made it worse. Since moving production from Russia to Kazakhstan, Ural has faced shipping delays, supply chain breakdowns, and logistical nightmares that have rippled across every level of the brand's operations. Ordering a new model often means waiting months. Getting replacement parts can take even longer. And for most mechanics, Ural's design is unfamiliar, awkward, and time-consuming to work on. In states like Wyoming, Arkansas, and Maine, finding someone willing or able to service a Ural is next to impossible. Then there's the technology gap. Modern emission standards have forced Ural to add electronic fuel injection and catalytic converters, but those updates feel like bandages on a broken system. The riding experience remains clunky and unpredictable. These machines vibrate heavily, struggle at highway speeds, and offer little in the way of comfort or efficiency. What once felt charming now feels obsolete. Resale value has also become a major concern. With fewer new buyers entering the fold, the used market has softened dramatically. Riders who spend over $20,000 on a fully outfitted Ural with a sidecar and accessories are now seeing trade-in offers at a fraction of that. And while some buyers still chase the novelty, even they are beginning to question the long-term viability of owning something so niche, so under-supported, and so heavily stigmatized by international politics. For older American riders, those who grew up on reliable cruisers or worked on their bikes in the garage, Ural simply doesn't make sense anymore. The maintenance is too frequent, the riding position is too awkward, and the risk of getting stranded without support is too high. Even die-hard fans, the kind who once took pride in riding something nobody else did, are starting to admit the headaches outweigh the joy. None of this is to say Ural didn't have its moment. The brand survived the collapse of the Soviet Union, the transition to Western markets, and multiple production overhauls. But it never found a way to evolve meaningfully. It held on to its past too tightly, and now that past is catching up with it. Today, Ural motorcycles feel like museum pieces. They are respected for their history, admired for their uniqueness, but no longer practical or desirable for everyday riders. Without major investment, a massive parts and service expansion, and a modernized approach to engineering, Ural may continue to exist, but only on the sidelines. Still with us? That means you're one of the few who still care. Subscribe now, because the next video will show you what real performance looks like without the hype. The next brand on this list made headlines with its return, then stumbled so badly most riders forgot it ever existed. Number 1. Norton Motorcycles. There was a time when British motorcycles ruled the world. They had a sound, a stance, and a swagger all their own. Norton stood at the center of that movement, fast, prestigious, and proudly hand-built. For decades, it carried the flag of racing heritage and mechanical elegance, winning fans across continents and generations. But in 2025, Norton's name carries a different weight. It is no longer a symbol of excellence. It is a reminder of what happens when legacy is mismanaged, promises are broken, and trust is destroyed from the inside out. The downfall began quietly. Missed deadlines, undelivered bikes, and growing complaints from loyal customers. Then came the public unraveling. Deposits vanished, workers went unpaid, financial misconduct surfaced. The factory, once positioned as a proud rebirth, was exposed as unstable and poorly managed. What should have been a revival became a collapse. For riders who had waited months or even years for their motorcycles, the fallout was personal. For dealers and service centers, it was catastrophic. And for Norton itself, the damage reached beyond bank statements. It shattered the very foundation of rider faith. Eventually, the company was sold to TVS Motor Company, a multinational manufacturer with the resources to rebuild. Optimism returned briefly. Investments were made. Announcements came fast. New models, better quality control, a brand reset. But the problems that dragged Norton down were not just mechanical, they were cultural and operational. Even today, with new ownership and a clean financial slate, Norton still cannot shake the doubt. Riders remember the betrayal, and in motorcycling, memory is everything. Across the United States, Norton's presence is nearly invisible. There is no dealership network to speak of. Test rides are nearly impossible. Service support is non-existent in most states. For riders who grew up maintaining their own bikes or relying on trusted local mechanics, this kind of vacuum is unacceptable. A motorcycle, no matter how beautiful or well-engineered, is only as strong as the system behind it. Norton does not yet have that system, and without it, the risks of ownership far outweigh the rewards. Even more troubling is the brand's continued silence. communication has been inconsistent, product timelines have slipped, and enthusiasm has been replaced by cautious waiting. Norton may be building again, but the question is, for whom? New riders don't know the name. Older riders remember the scandal, and with no strong marketing, no national community, and no visible leadership in the American market, Norton is quickly becoming more ghost than brand. It is a shame, because when Norton gets it right, the result is stunning. The bikes are gorgeous, their performance is respectable, and the design language still turns heads. But none of that matters without infrastructure, without confidence, without a reason for riders to invest in something they are not sure will be around in 5 years. A legacy brand like Norton deserves to be more than a collector's item or a cautionary tale. It deserves a chance to stand proudly in the modern motorcycle world, but until it can offer more than memory, that chance remains out of reach. These brands didn't just lose market share, they lost the soul that once made them matter. But while they vanish in silence, one machine from Japan is roaring louder than all of them combined. Click here to see the bike that's outperforming Harley in every way and costing half as much to do it.